Mr. Clerk, time's 5:51. I'll call this meeting to order. Town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as Williams Treaties of 1923. Shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. You get a motion to approve the agenda? Councilor Gallo, Councilor Gilliland, comments, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interests? Seeing none. One item, Aurora Economic Development Committee strategy. We have a presentation by Allison, Larsen, founder and facilitation, Maestra Inclusive Facilitation by TadZo Consulting. Ms. Hausz.
Good evening.
Floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much. Good evening, Council and Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having us tonight. So it's an exciting evening to bring this update. First of all, it's exciting because this is the first time I presented to you live and in person since I joined the organization. So it's kind of fun. It's also exciting because if you'll recall earlier this year, the AEDC had put forth an action item that we're going to work on in updating the Economic Development Strategic Plan. So we've been working forward to that and gathering as much information and input. And tonight we're going to present the status of where we are with that and also any of the feedback that we've received so far from the community. So to lead us through tonight's workshop, Allison Larsen, as mentioned, from Inclusive Facilitation. So she brings extensive experience in economic development from facilitation, strategy, and consultation. So she's worked with a number of municipalities across Ontario and an extensive client list across the US. So we're happy to have her. She's a strategic thinker, capacity builder, and if you've joined any of our sessions earlier, you'll know that she has a very unique approach to getting those nuggets of information that we're looking for. So your feedback tonight, along with our economic development ecosystem partnership session tomorrow, followed by the board session tomorrow, where the AEDC will roll up their sleeves and will prioritize everything that we've heard into the action plan and bring that back to council later on at an upcoming meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allison and we'll get started. Thank you.
Hello there. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. I have worked with some of you already in some of our meetings, and so I appreciate that very much, especially your leadership on the board. So you ready? A little bit of a graphic right there for you. You should know that I have worked with Lisa in the past, and it is refreshing to see. I've probably known her for 10 years, and it's refreshing to see her professional growth, but also how that applies here. I've looked at all those past documents and things that you've accomplished. And it's really exciting. So this is your jumping off point and going on to what's next in Aurora for economic development. And so today I'm going to update you on what we have discovered in this strategy discovery so far. And I'd love to hear your input on any of the items as we go through this, as well as what the next steps will be. I thought it might be good though, just because I never make assumptions that everyone understands economic development. So if you'll indulge me, this just kind of makes sure we all have a common understanding of how the local economy grows. And so there's kind of two avenues, and you are working in both of these areas. The first one is really looking at a traded sector or a primary industry that is defined by those that hire and that actually make a product that is sold outside your border. So they wouldn't necessarily be selling and circulating products inside your border. They could, but not necessarily. And the reason for that is when they sell a product or service outside of Aurora, they're bringing wealth into the community that helps pay for those taxes, that your general tax base, but you're also generating income because it's creating jobs for families or, at good quality wages. They tend to pay higher than other industries. And as that happens, those families, those workers then are able to stimulate the economy by participating with their earned dollars and recycling that in Aurora. And that's why it's important that you have a strong retail base, that you can capture those, that they're not spending their money outside the area. It's better when they can live local because, again, the housing and construction is an added benefit for you as well. And when those workers are able to really infuse their dollars into the local economy, that grows the tax base more, as well as the suppliers to those traded sectors. When they are located here as well, then we can add a greater impact from that. Again, they are paying their share of taxes, and then they are also hiring folks who then also, we would like them to live and spend their money here locally as well. So as economic developers, as elected officials, you're always looking at, where are we missing a gap? Are people not living here? Are they not buying here? Maybe they can't buy here because there isn't a retail, or maybe we don't have the suppliers or different parts of that system there. The more you have of that in your community or your geography that you're looking at, the greater of the economic impact for Aurora. So those are the things we're always aiming at. We can also grow our economy, though. Well, maybe I should back up. Any questions? I'm not trying to be like a professor on economic development, but I feel like we always think that just like landing the new big company is the only answer. And it's oftentimes when we nuance these other pieces, we also grow our economy. You can also grow your economy through tourism, and that's a different kind of way of bringing wealth into your community. I like to call it visitors, though, because like I'm not technically a tourist, but I'm a visitor and I'm spending money to stay in a hotel, to shop, to go to restaurants. So visitors can also be really useful. Think of the visitors that you have. You have a high visitor presence right now for your businesses. They're coming, the different managers or service vendors to those businesses are staying in your hotels, et cetera. If you have activities, then again, you can still circulate more. Those hotels and those businesses, restaurants and retailers can grow the tax base. They hire people, not always at the same wages as the traded sectors, but those folks, ideally, we would want them as well to spend their money locally here, to increase the demand for construction and buy homes and live here, which also, again, those secondary growth are able to increase the tax base. Because it all really comes down to this. You want a sustainable tax base, you want to meet the needs of your community, and you need income to do that. And in addition, it's also about what are you exporting out of this economy so that you can continue to grow more wealth. More wealth means more money, again, spent at those local entities for your residents, et cetera. But there's also another thing that many successful communities are looking to provide opportunities for individual growth. If you have just a flat level of type of employment opportunities, then as they progress, they're going to live somewhere else. So looking at that full multi-level stance of opportunities in the job market's also helpful. And that includes entrepreneurship. And we have seen already that there's some really strong entrepreneurs in this community at all levels, at the traded sector, at the retail level, et cetera. Should be very proud of that. I think it's very iconic for who you are in Aurora. So that's just kind of baseline there. Here's what we're doing with your strategy. Did you have any questions on that? You're probably like, we knew that. Or maybe sometimes it's the little nuance though. We are doing something interesting with your strategy. I believe very strongly, and I've been an economic development consultant for a few decades now. The most successful communities are those who actually can do this work themselves. So I have pivoted my business over the years or transitioned it to really help you as well continue this conversation, to continue your strategic work. And so we're going through 6 questions through a process that maybe is the first time in the few months that I'm working with you. But by the end of this project, your staff, your team, your board will constantly be looking at these questions so that there's constant evolution of the strategy instead of a strategic planning event. And so the first one is really about purpose. What is the fundamental justification of economic development in Aurora? Like, why do you do this work? I've read a lot of documents about AEDC and in classic situations, people write those, they're almost platitudes. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but the simplicity of like, why are you doing economic development? So that you can look at your constituents, you can make decisions about funding, et cetera, that really are in line with the fundamental reason for investing in this work. We have, and I'm going to share with you the discovery that we've done so far on context, which is what's happening around Aurora, around businesses here that demands creative change. Because when we pay attention to those things that are happening, that helps us orient the direction that we may need to prepare for. Just think if we'd only paid more attention potentially globally to what happened with the pandemic, what we might have shifted a little earlier or differently on. Then we're going to look at challenge, which is really, it's not like a challenge like we need to build more spec buildings or we need more industrial land. This is more like, what do you need to face to make progress? And in light of the pandemic, I'll give you another example. It's like, how did you do economic development? How did you operate the government when you were both open and closed at the same time? Those are both realities that you had to work within. And oftentimes when we can navigate paradoxes, we can do the most strategic thing, not just the thing that we think we should do. Baseline is really just then taking into account, if we're looking at the direction we're oriented for purpose and all those things happening around us and the challenges right in front of us, then it's like, then where really are we starting? What skills do we have? What resources do we have? Where are we starting on this? And that opens up the thinking then around ambition, which is what could be possible now in light of all of that. And from the ambition, then there's a move to action. I have found that in strategy work over the years, a lot of people like to say, well, here's where we are, and we just need to do these things, and they jump right to ambition. Oftentimes when we spend a little time noodling in these other areas, we actually, a lot of ideas really do emerge, and it helps us truly be strategic. So if this feels a little wonky, just go, hey, yeah, it's a little different. I can tell you it's very effective. And businesses jump right into this. They really are like, yes, this is how we operate our business. That will also help you get support for your strategy. So that's just kind of an overview of the entire process. Let me tell you some things that we've discovered. First, on this question of purpose, we had a conversation with the AEDC board and asked this question. And so what I'm going to share with you here is I'd call it the initial musing, because I think iteration is a really good way to get to what really matters. It's the way to move from chatter to matter. And so these musings, this is kind of what first emerged. And tomorrow we're meeting again with the board and others to further go deeper into this. The simplicity of a purpose is really powerful. You think of in my country when JFK said we're going to the moon, and what that meant for research. It was a really clear purpose statement. Did all the work align to getting to the moon? And so the AEDC board did rally around this language of prosperity. It's right there second on the list, but I think we're probably going to nudge deeper into that tomorrow in our work session with the board, and really this prosperity and who is the prosperity? Prosperity for all, prosperity for businesses, prosperity for workers. There was some interesting conversation around that, but really felt like these keywords are really resonating with everyone. Any questions, or do you see yourself in that?
Allison, I was just going to let you know, we're pretty formal and follow the procedure, and
Okay.
procedurally we each have 2 times to speak. So we'll probably wait till you're done.
Okay,
Okay.
that sounds fine.
Thank you.
And so then the next thing that we worked on, like I said, the second part was context. What's happening around us that demands creative change? Well, in economic development, the key audience, if you will, the key customers of economic developers are business, right? That's who they tend to serve. And so, although there are other audiences for economic development, but often it's the temperature of the business, right? We started the graphic there with who is hiring, who is making, paying taxes, et cetera. And so what we gathered on the last visit were 4 groups of, oops, this is not the right one, but that's okay. 4 groups of folks, and I'm going to go through each of those on the results: the target sectors, the human resources, and representatives from the promenade geography, as well as those who are doing work in tourism in Aurora. And so we have some interesting things to reveal. We just wanted to let you know that we had quite a few voices there. Oops. So we're going to start with sector. And so these would be like that first slide that I shared with you on the those primary industry or traded sector. We went through an activity with each of these that helped them classify their challenges. Because if we really want to understand what's happening, we need to understand from their point of view. And so they went through an exercise across industries. So this is kind of interesting to have them coordinate across each industry. They weren't all from the same industry, but definitely traded sector. And they had a variety of key challenges. You will probably see key talent and talent retention, no surprise, right? Across all of these sectors or all of these groups that we visited with. That is also a challenge that they would like to have workers here in Aurora, which is good for you all. They are finding that at different pay scales, it is unaffordable for those workers to be here. A lot of this session talked about the disruptive technologies and AI especially, that it wasn't just affecting one industry. You're probably seeing it yourself as well. And so this is really like changes so fast that they're hardly keeping up with it. Along with, how they can navigate those unknowns and the regulations that pop up when they're in an innovative space. So lots of typical challenges you expect from talent to the capital investment needs. So that was kind of where they had agreement on the key challenges. Their ask of Aurora, because we're like, okay, so those are what's facing you. They're not asking you to solve that as the community of Aurora, economic development in Aurora, but they are looking for some other things. And I'm going to tell you that all communities I've worked with for many years here now have been asking about marketing to attract talent. So I was not surprised to see that request. Everyone is trying every means to get workers and to have workers show up. But there are some things here that are very hands-on and useful, and that is that they want to access grants. They know there are opportunities for things, but they're like, could there be a way that could be streamlined by the town of Aurora that would help us actually access them because we're running our businesses and I have to go hire someone who I can't even hire people right now to access these things. So that was an interesting query that they made. A lot of conversation about ways both in person and online to get together, much like how we did in the meeting, to collaborate about challenges they're facing or new approaches to different things. There was a strong sense of wanting to get together and also learn from innovation that other innovators are doing, learn more about trends that are happening. What you can't see behind the little over thing there is there was also a direct request for co-working space. So we had all sizes of businesses. I think there's some beautiful mining of the type of things that they're looking for. Oh, thank you. That they're looking for. And so this really tees us up really well for the work we're going to do tomorrow. Let's take a look to human resources. So what we did is we also reached out knowing that talent is a challenge and said, okay, HR, let's get you in a room and see what else you have to say, because often you can give us more granular information that can be useful in trying to frame strategy. Similar exercise. And again, the idea of how housing came up and even transportation. I think you're well aware that it's difficult for transportation. They're hiring throughout the metro, no surprise. And for someone to be hired in certain areas, they literally have to go south to go north if they're taking public transportation. So those are some really big challenges, right? But at the same time, it is what it is for them to try to get workers from all corners of this region and this really strong marketplace, if you will. They did say that they would be able to hire more students if the laws were changed around the limited time to work. But then if you ask them, what do they want from Aurora? This is really, opportune work for you guys to do, like mapping out transportation systems, really understanding what the shifts needs are so that you would have data that you could take to those transportation authorities, et cetera, and see what could be tweaked or if bus schedules could be tweaked, et cetera. And so a lot about that, same with the accessibility and how that could be adapted. Those are directly in the conversation of transportation. They're looking for ways to find local candidates. Hiring is chaos today. You know that. Everyone's trying everything. There is no one silver bullet for that due to the labor shortages. That being said, they just simply wanted people to be made aware of them. And many of your traded sector or non-retail, most folks who live in a community don't know they exist because they're just that big box building over there. They don't know what really happens there. So that is a good request to be made. They also, again, like the sector employers, want more HR opportunities to meet up among themselves just in that room. Because of the conversations that were coming up, they were sharing best practices of, have you met so-and-so? Did you get information from them? So that cross-pollination, they want more of, even down to the wage and benefit survey data, which is available, they just don't know. So those type of opportunities to connect in person, to connect to information is really an opportunity when you look at what they've given you there. I think these are, if I'm sitting in Lisa's seat and saying, how can economic development help? There was quite a lot of encouragement after these meetings. Other two meetings were more on the retail side, the retail side, I shouldn't say local serving, but, and so at the promenade, the next one here, we had some local businesses, and in this case, I do want to clarify, because I know you're doing a ton of work on the physical space there. Again, we talked about what their businesses were experiencing. We were not asking them for feedback on that plan. So if you're like, but we've been doing all this work, why aren't you talking about this? This is really about their business issues. And so what they were looking there is, they want traffic. And if you look down all of these things on key issues, a lot of them have to do with how do we just get more people to know about our retail opportunity, our store, our things like that. And so they are seeing that since the pandemic, there is more local discovery, but they would like to have, more traffic, and that might come in the form of anchors, which is a recruitment or retail, or, other ways to drive traffic from, and you'll see on the next one, we actually talk about some events that the tourism folks came up with. And they're fighting retail increases as anywhere you're going to see. I mean, it's part of inflation and other things along that line. So what they want from you, though, again, to increase the traffic is more special events throughout the city. I think everyone can say that, and I've been to the Armory, it's beautiful there, and it looks like a beautiful setting for concerts, but there was a desire, how could we take that model and put it where we have stores too, where we have more access that they would have exposure to us. They would like to know, who do we really go to for our small business resources, kind of a concierge services. And I know that you've been staffing up in economic development for local business outreach. And so, looking at how that may be directed to retailers or not, that may be a different person as well. There is opportunity, but certainly an ask for who do we go to? How do we get help? And a lot of things have changed since COVID. So they're trying to figure it all out again, even new businesses since then. I feel like I'm a broken record somewhat, because some of these are duplicating from other sessions on more housing affordability and public transportation. That has a lot to do with these retailers do not pay the same kind of competitive wages that might be able to afford your house price point now. But the opportunity, I think that the two biggies that stand out here are these small business resources and concierge services. And then really this desire to have, they call it knock on doors, come see us, just, walk the blocks, and a lot of outreach for that. I know that takes staffing. There might be ways to do it with volunteers as well, but I think there's a welcome request for that to, where do we go, and come see us too. So it was an interesting conversation with the promenade participants. And our final group is with tourism. And Mr. Weiss participated in his role as well. So at a later time, he may want to add more to this, but this was an interesting, I know that things have been evolving in Aurora for you, because you have new hotels, and we had hoteliers there. We had also some restaurateur. And so no surprise, their key issues are labor, cost increases, labor. There's also, because of the way your town is developing, you're going through growing pains. They're good things to have, but they're growing pains. There is some, people don't know where to find us, so the signage isn't there, or there's kind of this disconnect somewhat between tourism and community. And there's an opportunity to leverage that, because I can tell you, every community that does really well in tourism, all the residents benefit from those amenities as well. So it does raise all boats. But that's why you see the ask of wayfinding signage. The hotels I can find with Google. I'm coming from out of town. I expect to use Google, but from a marketing perspective, for people to know, we do have new hotels to serve your family, or other reasons to have them in town. That was where that wayfinding was kind of coming up. This whole idea, though, of looking at tourism in a year-round engagement, and that you can really draw visitors year-round. Again, the request about events proximate to businesses, so that those retailers can leverage that. We had a lot of conversation around networking. It seems like all your businesses want to get together and really work together on some things together or learn from each other, which can be great opportunities. In particular, there is quite a bit of conversation around, could we be doing some special month-long promotional events with our restaurants or food things? I guess you've had some things that have gone like Oralicious, like they said, we don't have to do Oralicious. Let's just do some things that we're cross-selling each other, which I think is quite powerful when your businesses want to do that, especially when your businesses can say, we don't have it, but if you go 2 doors down, they've got just what you need. Or have you tried? Or in this case, restaurant passports where you get, a burger card and then you're in a drawing or whatever it is. We know that really successful tourism communities are selling each other very well, because the longer someone in tourism, the longer someone spends on a block in a town, et cetera, the more money they spend, because they're doing things, they're eating more, they're staying more nights. So if they come initially for a baseball game, how are you getting them from the fields to the stores, to the, to all these type of things, or bringing those resources to them? So tourism has a great way to grow the economy. It's just looking at where do you want to hone in your time, and honestly, where can you get the businesses excited to be your partner on that? Because the staff can't do it alone. So those are our contexts. I just got a few more slides here to let you know. We did some baseline work with, and we're going to be continuing to ask that question throughout this process. I'm going to show you what's up next. But in the baseline, we took a look at kind of using kind of this life cycle of projects where things gestate as ideas. They're then resourced in the poverty trap and move down into birth, which is kind of where they're starting out. When you start a project, it takes lots of tending, right? And then as they grow in maturity, there's really high return on investment. We love those because we don't have to think twice and we've got really good results. But sometimes we hang on to those mature things too long and they get rigid. We've all had that, like, oh, we've been doing it forever that way. And they're really not yielding the results. They're just starving resources. And so it's important at times to stop doing things. That's the quadrant there in the phase of creative destruction, so that we can open up space for more innovation, different approaches. Maybe we do that thing, but we do it differently. And so those many times on this type of eco cycle, this life cycle, it can be spanned over a period of time. You could take all the things that you resource as a government and look at it that way too. Sometimes this happens really fast. You start seeing things, you start noticing changes. All those other questions I was asking can lead to changing quickly because we're evaluating what's happening with that work and if it's the best use of resources, both time and people and money. So just to get started, I did ask the board to take a look at 6 of their, and these are pretty big items, investment attraction. Well, there's lots of things that go into that. But it was interesting as a learning experience. I'm sure you can't fully see the PDF or the Post-it numbers on the green and blue so much, but it was interesting to see how the groups had different opinions on that. And it was also constructive from a learning perspective, like, really, where are we? I challenged that, not me, but each other. They were talking of like, is that true? Could we be doing more? Could we have greater yield, et cetera? And so really this exercise was just a jumping off point to start that conversation. We're going to be doing more with it as we proceed. And I believe that as the strategy is implemented, as the strategic work is implemented, this conversation will continue. And so I just wanted to let you know that, like, it's important in strategic work to really look at the life cycle of projects. Sometimes you go through things, they accomplish what they need to, and they've served their purpose. And other things, you may be in, a certain quadrant for a long time because it really takes a while to get your legs, like I see tourism just there in the green, right on the birthing, and some think it's still in gestation. So maybe there's a lot of opportunities to expand that till you really are reaping the harvest and maturity of it, as an example. So again, these 6 areas of questions are really our framework for the strategic work. I mean, anyone can make a plan, but this is really about what are the strategic investments you want to make as Aurora in advancing economic development. And we're going to continue this work tomorrow really deeply with 2 important meetings. One is with about 22 ecosystem partners that are they are partners in economic development at different geographical levels, both in Aurora and beyond. And will be really interesting to hear how they answer some of these questions too, because we'll be digging through the 6 questions for them to share what they think the ambition for Aurora should be. That information will then go into the afternoon session with the board to identify some strategic ways forward. And each of those topic areas that are defined and agreed upon by the board will then go into individual action team meetings where they're going to take then another layer look at those 6 things for that particular work. So if there's a topic that comes out of tomorrow afternoon, meaning a topic is a strategic area of work, you will certainly be made aware of it and are invited at those action team meetings. In fact, if you want to come in the morning, you're welcome to as well. But we're going to really roll up our sleeves in late October and build out those areas of work. And then I don't leave you with that. I come back in November to do several things, a lot on capacity building, which is, I'm going to teach the group that's assembled what I do so you all can continue that work. I believe that my business work is really helping people work better. And so why not teach you what I know so you can do it and not have to hire me every time. My husband does not agree with that strategy, but I believe in it very strongly because you work better. And so we will also be doing a lot of work on that last trip around, I think AEDC, you have some really dedicated people that really care about Aurora. And then in light of this strategy work, what is the board's role in overseeing that? Because they've had different roles over time. And now it's like, where are you today? And how can you best serve Aurora? So that is what is up. And I will take any questions.
Thank you, Allison. Any questions? Councilor Weiss?
Thanks for the presentation. I didn't get to see the others, but I was in on the tourism one, as you know. When you look at your trip 3 and your action team meetings, can you give me an idea of who is on those action teams and what the actions are directed to?
Allison?
Sorry.
No, till the end of tomorrow, because the board is going to define what those topic areas are. We're still working through the churning. And so that we're taking the input from all these previous things, including tomorrow morning, and then the board will define those. And then we will, who will be at those meetings? I believe that we have a core working group that is representative of business, the chamber, and also your staff to say, okay, who should we invite to these things? And so if there's a topic, they may have I know 10 people that would be interested in this, but I also think you could do some general invitation on that too. So I'm answering your question to the best of my knowledge today, because tomorrow we're going to learn a lot more.
Councilor?
Yeah, I guess I was looking at what your experience has been in other similar communities about what kind of teams are produced? Are there tourism teams? Are there geographical ones? Are they industry-wide? How are they?
Question more. The teams will be about action areas of work. So if an area that AEDC wants to invest more strategic work is tourism, that could be a topic area. I have a prompt. Those of you on the board, pay attention here. Tell me if I've got this right. We worked on it together on our team. So it sounds like this. If Aurora was 10 times bolder, what is one specific initiative or that you would like to work on? That's ultimately the question at the end of the board meeting. In light of all the work that we're going to be generating, it's very generative. And so tourism could be one. I would think you'd probably need to be at that meeting because you are very involved in that, or you'd be invited at least. But it's not for me to say. I'm not a consultant that comes in and says, you should do all these things and you don't get to them. I have a lot of experience, and my experience to help you get what you really need is by asking the best questions. And so my answer is, we'll see what comes up tomorrow. And if they're wimpy little ideas, I might have them do it again. Just saying, because this is Aurora.
Councilor,
That's it. Thank you.
any other questions? Seeing none, Allison, thank you very much for coming. And I hope you have fun tomorrow. Maybe I might see you. I might pop in. I know Councilor Lane will probably be there. She's part of the board as well. But yeah, no, definitely looking forward to as you continue through this exercise and seeing what we come up with and how we move the town forward progressively for our economic growth.
Really good space, you know that. If you don't, you should know that from the external consultant. And so this is building on it for the next. I mean, the best the communities that are the most successful do the hardest work of strategy when times are good. Everyone does strategy when times are bad. But when times are good, that's when you really want to be strategic. You have some luxury to do that, but that also, that's what I've always seen over and over.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Council, motion to adjourn. Councilor Thompson, Councilor Gallo, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.